fix that before we leave. I really felt unworthy to be up here. We've got two fairly young, very good preachers that fill in, and they have been filling in, and they've been doing such a great job that I didn't feel like I should be up here. I felt like I needed to do something. So I did. All right, let me see. They're not as pretty as mine. Let me see, John. I didn't see yours. All right.
Children will be children.
Okay. Now, I'm going to be looking in Exodus 8. Well, I looked. Okay, now we can go home. Somehow I'm in Deuteronomy. Okay, Exodus 8. We start at the first verse. Read through 11 verses. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and say to him, Thus saith the Lord, Let my people go, that they may serve me. But if you refuse to let them go, I will smite your whole territory with frogs. And the Nile will be swarmed with frogs, which will come up and go into your house, into your bedroom, on your bed, and into your ovens, and even your kneading bread bowls. So the frogs will come up, and you and your people, and all your servants." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Say to Aaron, stretch out your hand with your staff over the river, over the streams, and over the pools, and make frogs come up out of the land of Egypt." And Aaron stretched out his hand over the water and of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land and Egypt. And the magicians, which did the same with their secret arts, making frogs come up on the land. Then Pharaoh called to Moses and said, "Entreat the Lord that he may remove the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let the people go, that they may sacrifice to you." Heavenly Father, I want to thank you so very much. It's been a long time for me since I've stood in such a position. And so I'm calling upon you to provide the strength that I need. Open my mind, my understanding, my spirit, my heart, Lord. And let me give all the praise and glory to you. And give me the words to say that may make a difference in somebody's life. And I thank you. Amen. Did you hear what the Pharaoh said? Did you hear what he said? Did you pick out? He basically said, "Lord, give me another night with the frogs." He was basically saying, "I like the slime. I like the noise. I like the feeling of being uncomfortable. So give me another night with the frogs. Why would he say tomorrow? Why would the Pharaoh say tomorrow? Why would he want to be another night with those smelly, noisy, slimy frogs? Then was just a little imagination. Can you see yourself in this reply of tomorrow? Can you? Tomorrow? Lord, let me live in this heartache one more day. Let me live in this sorrow one more day. Let me live in this aggravation one more day. Let me live in this unforgiving spirit one more day. Just give me one more day. Pharaoh was here first warned in verse 1, and then he's plagued with the frogs. And afterward with things like lice and little despicable things. And yet, by their vast number, rendered a plague on this mighty Egyptian society. Little old bitty things, fleas. I know myself around the house, if I'm sitting around doing something and I find a flea on me, there's actually hundreds of them. They're everywhere. Only here they were. They were everywhere. If I find one, I can't get comfortable. It's kind of like searching the house for whatever's lost. Get a flashlight and look around trying to find that one flea. Because it's so aggravating. I can't get comfortable. So, why did God do this to them? What was the reason that God did this? Well, actually, or the truth is, God didn't do it to them. They did it themselves. Because God had warned them. Because they would not listen to God, God's man that brought them God's warning. A man of God brought them the warning. And they didn't listen. I want to tell you that this man sitting right over here, that man sitting right back there, that man sitting right up there, they're not church employees. They're not staff members. They're men called of God to do God's work and to bring us warnings. And we need to listen. We need to listen. And I can tell you from the bottom of my heart, what they're doing is not easy. It may look easy. If you were to come up to me and say, well, Ernest, they only work one day a week, I might slap you. Because I did what they did for 30-something years. And it's not easy. You've got to put up with things that nobody else would dare put up with. Your family has to put up with things that nobody else would dare put up with. And so, let me give you a warning. When God speaks to you through one of God's servants, one of God's men, listen. Listen. They may look dumb. Yeah, I'm talking, but but they do have a special relationship with God. The pastor or pastors have a special relationship with God. God who rules heaven and earth is displeased with you, he told them. That was the warning. And with no change in their hearts came the wrath of God on them. And it will come on us too. The thing is, we can be living in the pits of hell, and some of us not even know it. We're so far away from God, we don't even know that's where we're at. But when God sends you the warning, you better heed it. Whatever it might be, you better heed it. Now, God could have plagued them with lions and bears and wolves and tigers and all that. But he chose something they worshiped. Something that they loved, and he used it against them. There was a female deity, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce her name, but she had a frog head. And the frog was connected with the most ancient form of nature worship in Egypt. Some even say that she was the goddess of childbearing. They loved their frog god. And God used her against them. And he can do the same thing in our lives. I believe that part of the problem with the families being broke up like they are is because the people worship the wrong thing. And God used that which they loved against them. I love my boys desperately. And I know how easy it is. I was thinking at one time in my life, God was calling me to do something. And I didn't want to do it. And so I drifted away from God. And I got so far away from God that my own boys were afraid of me. But that's how God works. That's how God works. Whatever it takes to humble us, to make us kneel, to make us look up towards Him, to go back to Him, to count on Him, to depend on Him, He can do it. And He will do it. I believe that He did this so that they could see His power over the whole earth. No place to go, no place to hide, nowhere to get away from Him. I know I tried. Nowhere. If God is our enemy, now listen to this. If God is our enemy, all the creatures and the heavenly elements are at war with us. They're at war with us. All that exists has become an enemy with no hope for us ever being victorious. The truth is, God will not play games with us like we do with Him. He won't do it. We mope around being depressed, being sad. We'll even say, well, why is God doing this to me? When the best thing to say is, why am I doing this? Moses delivered the word of God to the Pharaoh. If you refuse to let them go, it is at thy peril. Now, let them go for us could be anger, resentment, bitterness, any of a number of things. And the Pharaoh and Moses says the same thing. If you refuse to let those things go, then it's at thy peril. Whatever happens is your fault, not mine. We like to blame God for a lot of things that God has nothing to do with. Not only that, we like to blame God for a whole lot of things that He wishes He could do something about. But He can't because we're standing in the way. God does not punish us for sin unless we persist in that sin. I think Brother Johnny was talking about that here a few weeks ago. He was talking about sin, and he was talking about the practice of sin. You can always sin. Now, don't take this to heart and go out and do something, but you can always sin and ask God for forgiveness unless it's a sin you practice. Then that's a different story. If the Pharaoh, this is the part that gets me, if the Pharaoh would have listened and obeyed the man of God, then the controversy would have never happened at all. It would have immediately departed if he would have just listened. But he chooses the frogs. How many times in your Christian life have you chosen the frogs? Chosen them. When you knew something was wrong, something was not right, something was bothering you, something was bugging you. You don't have to know what it is for God to do something about it. All you've got to do is come to Him. But here, He chose the frogs. Does this sound familiar to anyone? Does it sound familiar to anyone? Something in your life you're not willing to get rid of, to turn over to God. The frogs made them miserable in their homes, in their beds, and at their tables. They could not eat. They could not drink. Nor could they sleep in quietness. When I sleep, I like quietness. That's why we don't invite Todd to stay over at the house. He snores too bad. The thing is, he used to do it in church too. But wherever the people were, so was their problems. God's curse upon someone will pursue them wherever they may go and lie heavily upon them, whatever they may do. They can't run from it. They can't hide from it. If you were to look in Deuteronomy 18, verse 15, but it shall come about, if you will not obey the Lord your God, to observe to do all His commandments and His statutes, with which I have charged you today, that all these curses will come upon you and overtake you. Cursed you shall be in the city, and cursed you shall be in the country. Cursed you shall be in your basket and your breeding pool. Cursed shall be in the offspring of your body and the product of your ground, the increase of your herd and the young of your flock. Cursed shall you be when you come in. Cursed shall you be when you go out. Where's left to go? Where is left to go? In other words, there's no hiding. But the good news is that nobody suffers under God's love. No one falls under God's curse except those that refuse to listen to His voice. When that happens, you cannot help yourself, nor can anyone else help you. Only God. No place for you to go, no one else for you to talk to. Only God. All that we can do without God is to make it harder, is to make it worse on ourselves. In verse 7, this is neat. He tells us that the Pharaoh's magicians, they could increase the plague, but not remove the plague. And this is true of us church people too. When God sends it into our life, there's no one that can help us but God. And this is the way so many of us so-called Christians live our lives. Trying to heal ourselves. Trying to make peace with what they can. It only makes it harder. It only makes it harder to cry out for God, to cry out for God's help, for God's cleansing and cleaning us up. We go on so long and we don't really think there's anything wrong. You cannot heal yourself. You cannot save yourself. You cannot bring peace into your heart by yourself. You didn't make this heart. God did. And the only one who can fill that little circle there with peace is God. He's the only one. You can't do it with drugs. You can't do it with alcohol. You can't even do it with surgery. God made it. And He's the only one that can take care of it. We do find that Pharaoh finally begs Moses to intercede with God for the removal of the frogs. And he promised that he would let the people go. But he had to let go of something that was holding God's curse upon him. And when he let that go, the curse was removed. He had to do what God told him to do. And once he did, the curse was removed. Brothers and sisters, no one can stand in defiance of God. No one. We may think we can outsmart God. We can use His love for us against Him. But you know, if you don't know, let me tell you, God doesn't love in the same way we do. We very often use love as a tool, as a possession. as a way of controlling something. But God understands love as a way of existing, of a way of being. For 2,000 years, He has been saying, have the honor over me. Direct me when I shall entreat God for you. Let me know when I shall entreat God for you. At what time shall God remove the frogs from your life? Uh-oh, I'm getting thrown out. They told me to be careful that happened.
That was a warning.
At what time shall God remove the frogs from your life? And one thing about it, God doesn't have a time frame. It's not, I'll remove it from 6 to 6:30, 7 to 9. Whenever we humble ourselves and realize we need to get those things removed from our lives, He can remove it. It just so happened the Pharaoh chose tomorrow. Was he so fond of his gifts that he wanted to go one more day? Are you so accustomed to or used to your pain, your disappointment, your discouragement that you just want to hold on to it another day? Are we so fond of our sin, our pride, our pain, that we want to spend another night with the frogs? Or, this is what many of us do. Maybe the Pharaoh thought they'd just go away. No need in him doing anything because they're going to be gone tomorrow or the day after. No. God sent them for a purpose, and He won't let them go until that purpose is fulfilled. We need to come to Jesus for the renewing and the removing of our frogs. Whatever they may be, whatever that represents in your life, Jesus can take them tonight. No one has more authority or control than He does over His creation. Be renewed by the love of God. Quit listening to God's supernatural power and start depending on it. Get up and do something. Don't spend another night with the frogs. As we close, there's a story that is told about, it's supposed to be a true story as I read it, that a storm-damaged ship adrift on the Atlantic Ocean, its crew perishing and dying because they had run out of fresh water. As the boat drifted off the coast of Brazil, another ship appeared on the horizon with its distressed crew members desperately signaled, "Help! Help! We have no drinking water and we're dying." Without altering their course, the distant ship immediately signaled back to the floundering ship, and the message said, "Lower your buckets. You're in the fresh water channel of the Amazon." And so they were. The mighty Amazon River rushed into the ocean with such force that the water stayed fresh for up to 200 miles. Some sailors refused to believe the foolish sounding message and died. Chose to die instead of believe the truth. But they found the message was true. The message could have saved their lives if they would have listened. And I've got to tell you, you can believe the message or not. But the warning and the message is true. What are you going to do? You going to reject it or accept it and live?